Seed Stage podcast. My name's Christopher Goodfellow and I'm the program manager of The Pitch. We're here today to look at some of the amazing pitches from the last few finals. I'm going to be joined by James from Robot Mascot, and he's going to help me break them down, think about what works, what doesn't, and hopefully give you some practical tips on how you can improve your pitches and also inspire you. It's fantastic to see these founders talk about their ideas and learn how they convey them in a really sort of compelling and enticing way. So let's meet our guest that's joining us today. So James, if you could give us a quick intro to yourself and what you do at Robot Mascot, that'd be brilliant.
Sure. Thanks for having me first and foremost. So I'm James Church. I'm the author of the best-selling book Investable Entrepreneur, which very much focuses on how to create a pitch that convinces investors to back your business. And I'm also the co-founder of a company called Robot Mascot, and that's pretty much what we do every day as well. We create pitch decks that convince investors, business plans, financial projections, putting together that full business case for investors. So yeah, that's us.
Brilliant. Thanks for joining us, James. So it'd be great just to have for context, like what you like to see in a pitch, what gets you excited about a pitch.
So for me, there's 5 key elements of any good pitch. The first is the hook, something exciting, usually a big vision beyond making money. Get me excited about this straight away, get me bought into this vision. Then I want to see an essence unfold. So what's the core essence of the business? What are the problems you're solving? What's the solution you're offering? Like, why should this thing exist in the first place? Why does it need to be in the world? Then I want to see some evidence, like key traction, validation, something that says this is beyond an idea. This is something more beyond me just having a great idea. This is something the market wants, something the market needs, so some evidence to back up this should exist in the world. Then a nod to a plan. You're a founder that's got plans beyond an idea. You know how to implement it, you know how to execute it. We can trust you with our money. And then of course an ask, how much investment do you need? What's it going to be used for? Then we can take the conversation forward and delve into the detail. But if you can get those 4 things across very succinctly, very quickly, then I think you're onto a winner.
I love that formula, James. Right, so let's check out our first pitch.
I'm Kate. I'm the co-founder of Rowdy Kind. We're award-winning sustainable skincare for kids. We take everything you'd expect in a really high-quality, natural bottle of skincare. Think body wash, shampoo, conditioner, moisturizer, and we turn it into this. Low waste, lower carbon, no compromise solution for parents and kids. A child born today will use over 50,000 single-use plastic bathroom items in their lifetime. 50,000. And kids and parents know that that's rubbish, double entendre. They're making loads of swaps to avoid this. For instance, they're changing to sustainable nappies, which are forecast to be over £1 billion in the UK alone by 2025. But when it comes to skincare, there are no options. They're having to compromise. They either choose something that's kind for their child's skin or that's kind to the planet. And that's where we come in. But you don't have to take my word for it. We have over £170,000 of revenue, over 3,000 customers. We have over 450 reviews with a 4.99 star rating. And now we're ready to go big. So I am the side hustle winner. So this has been run as a side hustle to date, but now we want to get into retail. And we're already in discussions with some of the UK's largest retailers. So we're looking for investors to come with us on that journey. We have secured 2 grants to help make that transition as well. I have over 20 years FMCG experience at Unilever and Johnson & Johnson and also in consultancy. My co-founder is a marketing genius with brand and agency experience, and we're building a board of advisors to come with us on that journey. So please come and join the Rowdy Kind.
Wow.
That was a great initial reaction, James. So tell us what you think.
Yeah, amazing. Well, she followed those 5 steps almost perfectly and in order. So I'm chuffed because that is exactly how a pitch should be delivered. So she got the hook, right? The hook was great. Started straight in. We're award winning, right? I'm setting up. I'm taking notice. This already sounds exciting. They've won awards for whatever it is, and they're about to pitch. Then a really clear and articulate kind of problem solution statement. Really understood what the product was. Loved the way she talked about the problem. There was sort of a figure of sort of 50,000 in there. There was talk around parallel markets. So she kind of said there isn't anything like this, but we know parents are doing this because look at how much is being spent on reusable nappies. So we can't show evidence that our particular product is going to be an absolute winner, but we can show the sentiment of the market by looking at parallels and going, well, people are spending a lot of money on sustainable nappies, so it makes sense they want sustainable and eco-friendly skincare for their kids as well. I think it was the 50,000 statement was the wastage in bottles, wasn't it? The number of bottles being used. So she had really good figures to paint that picture of like, why is this needed right now? Why does this need to exist? Which I thought was incredible. Then she jumped straight into that next step I said about the evidence, because she was talking about 170k revenue, 3,000 customers. We start to get a sense that this is beyond an idea. It's something the market wants. It's something the market needs. They're already buying it. She's taken it from a side hustle to now this next step. And then she briefly mentioned the plan. It's a side hustle. We want to go retail. We're already in talks with some of the largest retail brands, and we need your help. Then briefly touched on their experiences, which I thought added a huge amount of credibility. If I'm going to trust you with my cash, it's not just about the idea, it's about the individuals, and that came across in spades. And then there was that ask. The ask wasn't we're raising X amount, but it was, in this context, for this type of pitch environment, it was, we want you to join us on our vision, making this a reality, taking it from a side hustle to a big kind of player in the retail space. So yeah, she had it all. I think she had everything that you need to as an investor. I don't know how long that was, maybe a minute?
90 seconds.
90 seconds, so a minute and a half. And already the amount of information that was got across gives you that reassurance that I want to sit down with this founder and find out about this in more detail. I want to talk. I want to find out the detail. I want to check that this is as good as it sounds before we then invest in the business. What she's not doing is trying to give them all of the answers to their questions in that 90 seconds. She's just giving little bits that makes you go, I want to have a conversation. I've got loads of questions. I want to know more about this business. Let's sit down and talk. And that's what a really good pitch does, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I love what you said at the end there, because we often say, it's only 90 seconds. This is a conversation starter, right? You're trying to cover the bases, but you're trying to get that initial interest, and you can kind of get the other, go into more depth in the Q&A or the conversation afterwards.
That's it. You should always think of your pitch as the thing that prompts questions, not the thing that answers all the questions. And a lot of founders try and answer all the questions with their pitch instead of prompt conversation, prompt engagement and questions from their pitch. That's what its job is.
Right. And, because it is hard to get everything in there, right? Like, she really did pack a lot of detail in there for 90 seconds.
Really did. She really well-crafted story there.
And just one more question on the kind of structure that you suggested. So it's great to hear that you could see the kind of, she hits the hook, she hits the justification and so on. Is it important that they're done in the order that you described, or is it just that you have to hit those points?
I personally prefer the order I talked about, because I think it takes an investor on the right emotional journey. So the hook and the essence, the first kind of bits, like you're talking about the problem, the solution, the big kind of vision, that's talking to the emotional part of the brain. That's getting your heart, your buy-in from your heart. Like, I love this concept. This is a brilliant idea. This is a brilliant thing. I love it. Then the final two parts, they talk about the plan and the ask. We're going to retail. We've got these relationships in place. We want you to join us here. This is the logical side of things. Okay, here's our experiences. Here's our CV. This is the logical stuff that's talking to the investor's head. So now you're talking to the heart, you're talking to the head, and then that transition between the two is the evidence, because we're kind of backing up the emotional feelings you've got of like, this is a brilliant idea with 170k revenue, 3,000 customers. We've got some logic, some data to back up that emotional response we had initially of, this is a brilliant concept. Why doesn't something like this exist already? It's backing it up with data. So you're transitioning the narrative from the emotional part of the brain into the logical part of the brain for the final sort of close of the pitch, where you go into the plan and the ask. So for me, that works really nicely as a storytelling structure. Every founder will have their own flow and be able to perhaps want to tell their story in a slightly different way. But for me, it just makes it really lovely for the recipient to kind of get emotionally excited and then transition into that logical stuff. It just feels more natural from the person receiving the pitches sort of subconscious perspective.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, James. Thank you. So is there any room for improvement here? Anything you sort of noted where you thought it could be a bit better?
Not content wise. I think obviously there was there was kind of a joke in there, which she's perhaps noticed wasn't quite landing and had to explain the double entendre, which is perhaps never a good look. But I think we're being really picky if we start focusing on that. I think it's good to have a light-hearted kind of nature to it, but you have to be really good at pulling it off. Confident. And I think she sort of lacked confidence in whether or not people got that double entendre and had to explain it. So yeah, maybe less is more in that regard. But that was the only bit for me where I was a bit like, oh, that kind of disrupted the flow a little bit. But otherwise it seemed really good to me.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Yeah, the flow was great, and it kind of, she did land. She spoke very clearly, and she didn't rush. She did land her sentences.
He recovered really well from that. There's always a risk where if you put something like that in and it doesn't land how you think it's going to land, that it disrupts your flow and then it ruins the rest of the pitch. She managed to recover from that really well, and it didn't let it affect her. But it can kind of, you can suddenly then sort of clam up and like lose all your train of thought. Yeah, it's whether you take that risk or not with your pitch, I think.
Got it. So I should say as well, she was the winner last year, so obviously one of the better pitches we saw in there.
Okay, so no surprise there.
Yeah. Brilliant. Let's watch one more then.
Every year, 18 million lives are lost to heart diseases, and at least 75% of these occur in lower income countries like Pakistan. This shouldn't be happening because there is a really simple solution. Patients just need repeat care, but under the current model, this means frequent hospital visits, so patients lose time, wages, and savings while only gaining stress. As a result, patients just decide they'll forego their care, so unfortunately their conditions worsen. And we can't just let this continue to happen. So at Sakun, we're solving the pain points that patients face through home-based cardiac rehab. We send a nurse to the patient's home, and we equip that nurse with our web app. And our web app personalizes the treatment plan and guides the nurse so they don't need to be a specialist. Healthcare professionals love this idea, so much so that we have research contracts with 3 hospitals and agreements from 4 cardiologists to refer patients to us. Additionally, we're in talks with a healthcare marketplace to list our service, and we're getting ready to pilot with one of Pakistan's premier hospitals, Indus. Our team to date has raised £17,000 through competitions and spots on 7 incubators and accelerators. Janine and I, the co-founding team, trained as life scientists at Imperial and have complementary backgrounds in business and healthcare, having worked in business development and pharmacovigilance. We're supported also by a core team of 2 doctors and a healthcare management graduate, as well as an advisory panel with expertise in cardiology, business, and healthcare. We believe there is no team better placed than us to solve this problem, and we're already making progress to positively impact the lives of the 18 million patients in Pakistan. Thank you.
What do you think, James?
Yeah, it was good. I think seeing those side by side with the one we just watched, there was kind of, it was less articulate. They got all the points across. Seemed to spend much longer time on the problem and the solution than perhaps was needed. I'm guessing that running time was fairly equal, 90 seconds or so, but it just felt like it took a while to get into the meat. Started really well with the 18 million as being the hook, sort of leading with the big problem as the hook, because it's quite an emotive one. I think I'd have liked to have seen less explanation around the problem and the solution, and perhaps kind of the way that was phrased, talking more about a passion, a vision. Like, I think he could quite easily have said, been a bit more forthright with some of that messaging, like 18 million people have this issue, this isn't acceptable, this isn't good enough, like try and get across some of his passion as to why he wants to solve this, like this is a travesty, like use some big, and just kind of get across your own, not just we are doing this and therefore we've got this app. And then I think there could have been an opportunity there to really kind of bring everyone on board in that vision and kind of go, this isn't good enough, this needs to change, and then sort of launch into a little bit more of an articulate summary on the solution, perhaps. But some good evidence around the hospitals, the cardiologists, the marketplace that are all involved. Probably a little bit less detail on the plan. Raising 17k so far is good, but kind of what's next? Where do we need to go? What are we doing with the money? Though it was kind of like what we've done. Decent stuff around the team, although with these types of businesses, or any business really, You're very technical. They were clearly a team of scientists, have done a little bit in some business development roles, but I think I really want to get a sense as an investor on the entrepreneurial credibility here, because we can all be great in our fields. You can be a great scientist, but it doesn't mean you can spin out a product and make it a success. They said they had some business advisors. It might have been worth a couple of seconds just to say, one of our advisors has previously built a medical startup and exited it for X billion or whatever. So it's showing that there's entrepreneurial experience in the team, because I think that's going to be key with this type of business, because it's great to have brilliant minds around the science side of things, but do we have the entrepreneurial stuff to get it off the ground? But yeah, good. But I think there was quite a contrast between the first and the second one in terms of the speed and the passion, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was really interesting because when he pitched at the regional final, like he really, really struggled. And actually it was kind of one of those pitches that sort of stopped and restarted. So you saw a big jump. And I know a couple of the judges kind of worked with him between the two to help him with the confidence. But you could still kind of see that although he got through it okay, he obviously wasn't as comfortable perhaps. On that front, for founders that are maybe a bit more, that struggle with public speaking or a bit introverted, like, is there any advice you give them on sort of, how to get that delivery a little bit more polished, get a bit more comfortable with what they're doing?
It's really tough, right? Because you've never done this stuff before, and you're suddenly, you're putting yourself up on stage in the spotlights, and it's nerve-wracking, and kudos for even putting yourself in that position, right? Because it's tough, and you're opening yourself up to scrutiny like this, right? So it's not easy. It really is a case of just practice, make incremental refinements, but once you've got that narrative that you're happy with, just roll with it and keep going. And passion's a big part of keeping an audience engaged when you're speaking. So try and find that personal hook, that passionate bit, just to get them engaged right at the very beginning. And if you can do that, and then just keep everything as tight as possible, and just do it again and again and again till you know it like the back of your hand, and just work on, once you know the content, you can start to then work on your performance. But that comes with time and experience. And these are all, first time founders who are doing remarkably well to even get up on stage, I think, and kind of get all of this stuff across in 90 seconds. But yeah, it takes time to get good at it.
It does. And I think, competitions like the pitch, I mean, I'm obviously biased, but it is an opportunity to try and practice, to work with a coach, to get up on stage and get that in. And a lot of the great founders we meet, certainly in their first couple of years, will just do a lot of these type of competitions, because it is just, you not only are you meeting investors, but you're just getting that confidence, getting the ability to get up there and do it.
Yeah, 100%. And everyone hates it. I've never met anyone who enjoys this. That it's all just a necessity. Like, the entrepreneurship's a journey of 1,000 pitches. Once you've pitched this, you're going to be pitching to investors to raise investment, and then you're going to be pitching to corporates to come and buy your product. You're going to be pitching to partners to collaborate with you. You're going to be pitching for more rounds of investment. You might even end up pitching your business to someone to acquire it in a few. You're just constantly pitching throughout your whole entrepreneurial journey. So the quicker you can get into a position where you're up on stage and you're taking that leap of faith and just going, right, I'm going to start the journey of getting good at this. By the time you get a few years into it, you're going to be a pro.
That's great advice, James. Thanks. So I was going to do a different pitch, but given the points around kind of passion, everybody we see in the final and the regional finals is incredibly passionate. You don't start something like this, you don't go on this difficult journey unless you have that passion. What we're talking about here is, how do you convey that? How do you get that across?
Conveying the passion, yes.
Yeah. So I want to jump to a different one that covers a little bit more on the sort of storytelling side, I suppose. So let's watch another one.
Run a successful cake making business and you have 4 kids, and then one day your fridge breaks and you don't have enough money to get it fixed. So your business has to shut down until your husband gets his salary at the end of the month. It sounds crazy, right? I mean, if it happened here in the UK, you just use an overdraft or, get a credit card. But it happened to my cousin Mary, and she couldn't get a loan because she doesn't have a credit score. She's one of 2 billion people globally in the same position who can't get a loan from a bank. We've built an app that uses smartphone data and machine learning to find trustworthy people to lend to in Africa. And 400 million people like Mary in this underserved market could be worth up to $500 billion annually. but nobody's focusing on these people who just need a bit of support. My family's run microfinance banks in Ghana for over 30 years, and I was an advisor at a firm that went from 100k in seed funds to over $10 million in assets, so it's a market that I know really well. Our founding team has deep experience bringing fintech and machine learning products to market, and between us we have founded 4 companies and we've got 2 PhDs. We launched our MVP last month to a group of female micro-entrepreneurs and 100% repaid on time. We've now got 6 microfinance banks on the waiting list to work with us to lend to their 22,000 existing customers. We haven't started fundraising yet, but we have taken 2 small checks from some prominent angels, including Tom Blomfield, who co-founded Monzo. We'd love to win the pitch that will help us to raise awareness of the huge problem that we're trying to solve, and it will help us on our way to helping millions of people like Mary. I'd welcome any questions.
I mean, are we ignoring the fact he's reading it off the phone?
No, well, let's talk about the fact that he's reading it off the phone.
So I think that's probably, hiding behind that script, hiding behind that phone does mean that you don't get the passion, right? It was very robotic, looking down at his feet, not looking at me in the eyes, not gesticulating, not looking excited. And that instantly puts a barrier up. And I found it very difficult actually to absorb a lot of the information he was saying, I think almost as a result of that. I loved the personal story angle to it. That's the hook there, which he can leverage. But the path to getting me through that pitch, we talked about those stages, and this is an example. The other 2 have kind of more or less followed those 5 phases in the order that I set them out. Whereas this one kind of weaved across them in different ways, and it made it very difficult for me as someone looking at this as a potential investor to kind of get all of the information I needed in the sort of buckets in which I need it. Because if you imagine 5 buckets of content across those 5 things, rather than filling up one bucket and moving on to the next, it was kind of, you're putting a little bit in each one and then going back and you're trying to place all this stuff. Okay, there's a bit of traction, there's a bit of evidence, there's a bit of validation, and it's kind of weaved throughout the pitch, and it was very difficult to follow. So my advice would be kind of get used to that story that you want to tell, but kind of reduce that phone script down to 5 or 6 points, and they're just bullet points on your phone. If you still need that thing there to remind you of what you need to say, and just talk around those freely, roughly what you want to say, loosen up, don't worry too much about hitting the exact points, but kind of loosen up a little bit and just kind of go, I need to talk about this one thing, and I'm just going to talk about it, then I'm going to move on to the next one, and that I think will free this individual up to have a bit more engagement with the audience. But yeah, the story was good. There was good waiting list stuff. They had some chat from Monzo, all really good things. But like, you've got a guy from Monzo on your team, like that you should be like buzzing about that, and that should come across in the way, like when you talk about it, like we've even got so-and-so from Monzo who's an executive director on the board or whatever it was. Didn't sound very excited by it. It was just like, oh yeah, we've got some bloke from Monzo. Like, it was really dulled down because he was reading off that script. And these are things that you want investors to walk away with and go, do you remember that guy? It was really cool. I can't remember exactly what he did, but he's got like the guy from Monzo on his team. Like, I really want to have a meeting with him and find out more. Like, there's just these little things they're going to take away and kind of go, there's something there. There's something, it's worth seeing. If that guy's seen something in him, then we should probably take this seriously. And, that probably wasn't coming out enough in the performance, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. So what I really liked about it is, like you said, personal story at the beginning, which is kind of a nice way to, not create a sort of nice hook. But as you say, quite buried in the phone. And I liked your tip there about, just if you have to have a prompt, because I do think a lot of people like that, will take a card up on stage or something. It's almost like a kind of safety thing, right? Like at least they're holding something. But don't do it. Don't write it out verbatim. Just have your key points. I think that's really useful.
Yeah, I think so. Even if you think, I'm not going to read what's on there, I'm just going to, and I'll just glance down occasionally if I forget my place. Once you're up on stage, you've got all of those eyes looking at you, the spotlight's on, and then you start to sort of clam up, and you just go, it's there, I'm just going to read it. If it's not there, you can't, and then you have to go through with it. You have to kind of push through to that kind of presenting it mode. So I think that really helps.
Perfect. Okay, let's do one more.
Hi everyone, I'm Gabby, and at age 22, I was a trainee teacher placed in a sixth form centre where students would ask me questions like, Miss, what's the difference between a credit card and a debit card? Or, I really want to get into this career, how can I do it? 88% of young people and 94% of employers believe that life skills are at least as important as academic results for young people to be successful. But often, it's not until we leave education and step out into the big wide world that we really start to notice where the gaps in our knowledge lies. There are over 7 million 20-somethings in the UK trying to figure it all out. So I left teaching and launched Talk 20s, the UK's first peer-to-peer community that focuses on normalising and discussing the highs and lows of early adult life. Think money-saving expert, but with life skills. We have 4 key pillars of content. They are finance and money, career and business, well-being and relationships, and adventure and culture. And in terms of traction, we've built a community of over 30,000 20-somethings, with our MVP being the Talk 20s podcast, for which we've been nominated for multiple awards. To build this business, which is Gen Z focused, I need a really strong Gen Z team. So I'm joined on this journey by Felix, a fellow podcaster, and our creative producer, Georgia. In terms of revenue, we work with brands in terms of partnerships. So we work with a large UK leading digital bank, who are our main headline sponsor, and lots of other companies who are really focused on building their brand awareness within the Gen Z markets. We've had an acquisition approach already, but we're focused on raising investment to launch our Learn platform in 2023. Thank you very much for listening, and I'd love to answer any questions that you have.
What do you think of that one then, James?
Yeah, really, really good presentation. I'm really confident in the way she spoke and the way she presented the business. Another great personal story there. She's seen this firsthand. She used to work with her target audience and was getting asked these questions. So there's a clear passion, a vision, a reason why she feels this needs to exist, because she's seen it firsthand. And then she sort of backs that up with a couple of statistics, not overwhelming us with too much data, but just kind of going 88% of, I think it was kids, and 94% of employers, or possibly the other way around, see this as being important. So it's not just my personal experience. This is backed up by the wider market. We can see this happening in there. And then I loved the way she segued. She got in the market size without going, and our market size is. She said there's 7 million Gen Z or whatever it was, individuals that fit this mold. I want to affect. She's kind of getting across her vision. I want to affect all 7 million of these individuals, but also telling us how big an issue this is, how many people are in her potential market. So that was really cool, or a really nice way of kind of the content flowing from one to the other, but giving us these little insights that we can take away and go, wow, this is a big opportunity. The validation was interesting. So my assumption, probably wrongly, just because of what we do, was that this was going to be some kind of app or platform, and then she sort of went into a podcast. So that was a bit of I wasn't expecting that, but I kind of get the MVPs, the podcast, people are engaging with it, we're winning some awards. Perhaps we need to say we've got 30,000 community. Sounds like there's people interested in this content. I think what I wasn't overly clear on, if I was looking at this through an investor's eyes, was how do we turn this podcast into something commercially viable? It's going to generate huge revenues, going to deliver me a massive return. Very briefly at the end mentioned something about a Learn platform, but by that point my head's already going, well, it's a podcast. Like, yes, we can make it a big podcast, and yes, we can get sponsorship, but that's not going to get me venture scale returns on capital. Like, that's not an investable proposition. So I think that needed to be kind of brought in. That plan bit that I talked about is sort of missing. We've got the traction, we've got this community of 30,000 people listening to our podcast, engaging. We've got plans to create a learning platform that's charged on a X subscription that is driven by the engagement we get through the podcast to deliver X, Y, and Z in the market, and then we can go into the rest of the pitch, because it just felt like that was tacked on at the end, and we were suddenly talking about a podcast, and I was wondering how do I get my money back if I'm an investor. So yeah, that earlier on would have been good. And then the final point would be around the team. Very similar to I think maybe the second video. Great, she's got a team of Gen Z individuals, or Gen X, I can't remember what it was, and herself, who's turning this into a business. Great, we've got a content producer, we've got people kind of promoting the podcast on social media. We've got people editing the podcast that you record. But where's the business mind here? You're an ex-teacher. So where are we getting the validation that we can turn this into a business? And definitely considering there was no plan in there. There was no, and here's how we're going to turn this podcast into a highly scalable business opportunity where you can get a return on investment. I'm kind of left at the end going, she's awesome. This project is amazing. I wish you the best of luck with it, but I don't see how I can get my money back as an investor. And that's obviously the crucial bit. And there might be lots of people saying, I love this. I love you. You're very clearly passionate about this. Let me introduce you to so and so and so and so. Imagine this was on Dragon's Den and you're pitching and you've got Stephen Bartlett there with and obviously his podcast. You'll go, fantastic, love it. I'll give you an hour of my time. I'll give you some tips on how to promote your podcast, but where's the business opportunity? That's probably the response you're getting from that pitch with investors.
So let's dig into that tiny bit then, because I think, as you said, she comes across really well. You can see the passion, and she did actually win People's Choice, which is, kind of validation of that. But I do find that, we're talking about really early stage founders, and often they are building something that is an MVP. And, so I remember Financial, for example, now have an app. It's doing really well. They've raised seed investment, etc. But they actually started out just with a PDF, with a course essentially. So how do you balance that idea that, you're building something now, knowing that it will sort of validate something else later, but how do you sort of the balance of the reality now versus the plan later?
Yeah, and that's where those 5 elements I talked about come in, because you get to that point of going, we've got the MVP, we've got the 30,000 users. But this is exactly the same story as a company of ours, Frollo, which was a single parent community to support single parents. And they had a online community of single parents, of Facebook group and Instagram following of tens of thousands. Their pitch was, we've done all of this, we've built this community of single parents because I'm a single parent and I wanted to build this community kind of selfishly for myself to get the support I needed. But there's an overwhelming desire and need here from single parents to have something more formalized. We've done some surveys, some research with this community. We've developed some wireframe visuals of what this single parent community social media platform looks like. And here's the results. And we are raising investment to launch a single parent social media platform, which will be monetized in this way. And here's the validation we have, the evidence we have to back up that's the next step for this business. So you're showing your plans to commercialization. So you've got to get across a few stories, like the story of the vision and the problem you're solving. And it's a very meaningful problem. But unless there's a commercial vision, unless there's a way to commercialize this idea, then it's a great hobby, it's a great project, but it's not necessarily something that's going to deliver venture scale returns to an investor. We've only got a few seconds in these pitches to get that across, but it's how do we commercialize this? And you could literally jump into that. And we're going to commercialize this opportunity by launching a learn platform, whatever she called it, which delivers X. That was all that was needed, but it was just missing that. So then we go, right, we're taking this from a podcast to a business that's going to be able to scale. And then we can talk about that. But for the rest of the pitch, I had the wrong perception of what was going on because there wasn't that one sentence in the pitch.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I really like that because it's not actually a massive rewrite of the pitch. It's just a sort of change of emphasis, and you just put a little bit more on the plan for the next steps and a little bit less on kind of what you're monetizing now.
So we've built this podcast with investment. We're looking to translate that audience into whatever this was, a learning platform for individuals. Like that's all that was needed.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much for running us through the pitches there, James. There's lots of really practical tips, and it's great to see your responses and kind of how you get excited about watching the founders too. I absolutely love that. So just before we go, just tell us if people want support, like how do they find you? If they want a copy of their book, how do you get it? Yeah, just give us your plug.
Yeah, cool. Well, firstly, thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it. It was good to see those pitches in action. So yeah, if you're looking to find out a bit more about pitching for investment and kind of want to get an understanding of how all of this, everything I sort of talked about today, kind of starts to articulate into some assets, you can go to pitchready.co.uk. From there, you can take a 30-second quiz. You'll get a tailored report on how investor ready you are right now and the areas in which you need to focus your attention to become more pitch ready. And from there, you'll also get the opportunity to get a copy of my book completely free as well. And also join some strategy sessions and events that we run as well to get more knowledge. So yeah, pitchready.co.uk, and you'll unlock a whole bundle of goodies and support from us at Robot Mascot.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that, James. I'll say as well, I would recommend following James on LinkedIn, where he shares lots of practical advice about getting funding. So that's it for episode 1. If you do want an opportunity to practice your pitch, if you do want that access to coaching and mentors and everything that the program provides, please do check us out. The link to apply is in the show